Hi, I'm retired NYPD Detective Vic Ferrari, and welcome to NYPD Through the Looking Glass podcast, where you get unique insight into the New York City Police Department. Before we get started, I encourage you to check out my Amazon author page, where you'll find my series of behind-the-scenes NYPD books with $10 paperback, $2.99 ebook download, including my latest and greatest NYPD Laughing in the Line of Duty. Today's guest has a fascinating past. He grew up inside a Boston organized crime family and started his criminal career selling narcotics for the patriarchal crime family before moving to Philadelphia to serve as a capo under Skinny Joey Merlino. After serving 14 years in federal prisons, Robert Luisi has turned his life around. He's now the author of two great books, From Capo to Christian, The Life of Bobby Luisi, and God's Plan Revealed. If that's not enough, Bobby also has a great podcast called The Teacher's Ministry, and it's on YouTube and where other podcasts can be found. Robert Luisi, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Vic.
Now, pleasure is mine. Robert, I know I kind of gave your introduction, but just tell our listeners a little about yourself.
Well, I was born in the North End, which was headquarters for the Petriarca family for years. Italian walked around these people all my life. My father was an associate of theirs, and we're really tight with them. So I grew up meeting all these wise guys. 11 years old, I went to work for the Angiulo family with the pinball machines. It was called loan vending. Yeah, I used to do the dime machines on the weekends and work in the warehouse during the week. Had the pinball, all of that. So I really was exposed to a lot of this at a young age. I really was. And around maybe 15, 16, I moved back to the North End with my father. And so at that time, I was living in East Boston. I grew up there. And I was around these people every day. I don't know if they were just grooming us or we hung around every day with them. But, they were a big influence on my life. But I wanted to be, at that time, I was working after school as a carpenter, being an apprentice. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a builder. And that's what I ended up doing. I saw their life. I wasn't too crazy about it. I wanted to do legit work. And, I became a developer. I got a few builder's licenses in Boston, and I went from there.
How old were you, would you say, that you kind of realized that your dad played out of bounds?
Oh, young. Oh, I knew it. Because other people knew it. The people I was around in East Boston, they all knew what he was. I knew that.
I I got a chuckle when you said the pinball machines because I grew up in the Bronx. Anything
Yeah.
for people that don't live in major U.S. cities with Italian populations, you just can't have a vending machine or like the amusement games before, like Atari and then all these Sega games and everything. Kids would hang out at the local pizzeria and they would
Yeah.
feed quarters into playing asteroids or space invaders, all that. And like you said before that, pinball machines. And you couldn't just get yourself a machine and put it in your pizzeria because someone was going to show up and go, where did this come from? And who are you paying? Who are you splitting this with?
That's right. It was funny because they had the dime machines. It was a gambling machine. I'm sure you're familiar.
Oh, yeah.
It looked like a pinball machine with no flippers.
Joker
You
poker?
shot the, yeah, no, no. You shot the ball. It looked like a pinball machine. And it went in a hole. And if the numbers lined up, you won. I used to go in these clubs. There'd be $400 or $500 in dimes in these machines in those days. I was 11 years old. This is in the 70s. This is the money that was being made. Every club we went, some club 200, some 300. And every Saturday I rolled the dimes with a big metal machine. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's what I did on Saturdays. Yeah, and at that, I was making like $50 a week. 11 years old. That was pretty good in 1970, you know?
Did you get involved with the football sheets?
Well, that was later when I, took over some things in Boston and, I had the football cards under me, gambling, every loan sharking.
Was your dad a capo? I mean, did he
Hmm?
rise to that? Did your dad become a capo in the Boston mob, or was he a soldier?
No, he was a soldier. He was a soldier.
And unfortunately, him and I believe your cousin were murdered inside a restaurant in broad daylight. Can you go into that a little?
Yeah, my father, my brother Roman, my cousin Anthony, and Sonny Pelosi were murdered. There was a beef the night before. Something occurred, and they were caught off guard. They didn't have guns on them, and they were caught off guard. That's about as much as I'm going to say about that.
I understand.
But yeah, listen, I lost a lot of people on that day.
Well, I mean, you got it. You were reluctant to get into organized crime. You basically had your construction business going, and then because of economic problems, you started making your way into the Boston mob. As the son of someone, was it easy to navigate that landscape going from the civilian world, crossing over the line into starting out with the mob?
Well, I always walked the taller fence, if you understand what I'm saying. Always in and out, but really trying to be on the legal side of it. You know, all my friends were all street guys. Like I said, I grew up in the life. I was on Martha's Vineyard building homes. I was specing homes, building homes. I was there from 84 to 90. The market crashed on the Cape, and I ended up losing everything. And so when I came back to Boston in 1990, the only thing I knew to do was go on the street. I had two kids at the time when I came back, and they needed money. So that's what I did. I went out on the street.
And
I
you
had the name,
so
so
right, yeah, yeah. So that kind of opened some doors for you.
oh, it did. Oh, it did.
And you got into the drug game. Can you go a little into the operation and how much weight were you moving?
Well, when I started going in the neighborhood, I saw all these young guys. They had Cadillacs, beautiful clothes. They're not working. They're all dealing with cocaine, most of them. And I said, this is what I have to do if I want to earn some money. So I started to learn about it. I went from selling $20 bags out of a barroom to flipping 5 to 10 kilos a week at the end of my career. Yeah.
And when that money started coming in, like I know you said you got in and out. From that, did you get into sports betting and Shylock?
Sports, card club, Shylock. I got into everything.
How soon
I had
after?
a big, yep,
I'm sorry.
I'm
No, no,
sorry.
I'm sorry. I cut you out. I'm sorry.
No, I had a big card game in East Boston, Alabama blackjack. You know, some people want 20, 30,000. It was a fast game, big money game. Made money with that. But I ended up closing that down. The money from the drugs was so
Right.
abundant. I just put everything back on the street and shy money in the sports.
How long did so when you first started, like you said, the $20 bags, and then it progresses to 5, 10 keys a week? How long would you say the progression that now you're all in, and being a mobster is your full time job?
Well, like I said, I was scraping in 90 when it came back. I'd say by 94, I was in a great position and the money was coming in big time. So I know I made a few million in a few years right away. Yeah.
So now you're in, and now
Yeah.
what happens is, and I'm sure this wasn't part of your plan, a mob war takes off in Boston, and now you're with the boys, so you got to choose a side, obviously.
Right.
Could you go into that Boston war and what started it and whose side you were on?
Yeah. Well, there was I don't want to bring his name. He's a close friend of mine. He wants to stay out of a
That's
lot of
fine.
this. But a friend of mine, he was made under Frankie Salemi. And my father ended up being with Jackie and Frankie Salemi. So obviously, I fit right into that crew, into that faction. But the old faction didn't want them there. Didn't want Frankie there as a boss. So there was a lot of opposition. And there were some young Turks in the neighborhood. There was actually 3 crews that all were coming up against us at the time. They were with the old regime, and the old regime was making the promises.
Who was running the old regime?
Bobby Carosa, there was a few of them. There was a few of them. Although myself, I like Bobby. Bobby was a good man, you know. I knew his wife, nice people. Hey, as far as that goes in the life, if you want to say that. But this is what was happening at the time, and a lot of people got killed, a lot of murders, and it was a struggle coming up at that time. Wasn't easy, but at the end, everybody got picked up just about, and I was kind of like the last man standing at the time, you know. But when I got into the war, it just felt, it was business. This is just something we had to do. I had a big cocaine business, loan shark business. And if we didn't get out there and do what we were doing, I would have lost everything. You can't call on the street you know. And I hate to say it like this, but if you don't got the balls for this life, you shouldn't be in it. So if it's wartime, peacetime, whatever you have to do, that's what you have to do in this life.
Which side was J.R. Russo against Salemi, or was he with Salemi?
Well, it's JR's faction that was against Salemi, but it wasn't JR himself, I believe. You know, he was in prison. Vinny Farrar was in prison. If these guys were still on the street, I would have never went to Philly. I would have had no need to do that. You know, but they were gone, and everything was new there.
You know, that J.R. Russo, I mean, he was an old man, obviously, by the time, you were out there. But, I mean, it's fascinating. He made his bones by killing Joseph the Animal Barbosa in San Francisco. Did you know Barbosa? Because, I mean, he
No, I
was
didn't. No, I didn't know.
before your time.
Yeah, he was before my time.
I mean, not that it's funny, but I was doing some research on the Boston Mob War, and I found this article. It's funny, but it's not funny. Just to get your reaction. And this is from a Boston newspaper. Cops found Richard Devlin slumped behind the wheel of a 1994 Buick Skylark. Devlin was wearing a bulletproof vest, had been shot in the head, was in critical condition. He dies a few days later at the hospital. While police are attending to Devlin, Richard Gillis approaches them and states he too has been shot, wounded in the mouth, left shoulder, and grazed head. Gillis tells the police he had not been in the car with Devlin, who was also shot, but he couldn't explain why several of his teeth had been shot out. The gunman were found inside the vehicle. I mean,
Right.
come on. It's a crazy story. I mean, I can't even imagine what the cops were thinking with something like that.
Well, listen, I mean, you can't blame Richie for not wanting to, you know, it's like me when every time I got picked up, I don't know what you're talking about. And that's what Richie did. I mean, he didn't want to admit he was in the car, but unfortunately, when he got shot in the mouth, the few teeth fell, you know, blasted out into the car. What were you going to do? You know, he was in the car.
I hope I got this right, but I find it fascinating that later you're in prison with the boss of the patriarchal crime family, Frank Salemi,
Yeah.
right? And with him is Whitey Bulger's partner, Steve Flemmi. Were
Yeah.
you there when Cadillac Frank realizes that Flemmi has been ratting on him and putting him in jail for decades?
We found this out on the street before I got arrested. Frankie was already in there for a year or two with Johnny Monorano and with Stevie Fleming. But Stevie was under Frankie's protection because now Frankie's going to use him like a pawn, like he had used Frankie. That I guess was Frankie's plan. But that didn't work out so well. When I got picked up, I got put in their block. And who was in there with him? His underboss was in there, Bobby. And he was friends with my father. And I knew that Stevie was under his protection. So Stevie looked at me one day. I wanted to spit at him, to be honest with you. And I just let it go. I walked away from him. I just walked away from him. You know, Frankie had that power to protect him. I wasn't going to interfere with that. These guys are fighting for their lives. So I just let it go and I walked away. You know? But it's sad because I know that Frankie had met with Connolly. I knew Frankie knew some of what they were doing. Maybe Frankie thought it was one-sided, but it wasn't.
Right.
They were working with them, you know. But all through the years, I heard that Whitey was a rat. So he never came around me, so I didn't care what they did.
Did you ever deal with Cadillac Frank's son, Frankie Jr., or his brother, Jackie?
Yeah, Jackie, I did. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I was with Jackie a lot. He just passed away.
Oh, I didn't. I know. Frank died a year or two ago now. Jackie passed.
Yeah, Jackie passed too, yeah.
And here's another story, a question I wanted to ask you. And this one really, I don't understand it. Maybe you might. Did you know a guy by the name of Steven DeSaro?
That's familiar.
Okay, so Steven DeSaro owns this club called The Channel.
Oh, yeah. I know who Steven was, yeah.
And he gets involved with Cadillac Frank and his son. And
Yeah.
Frank suspects that he went bad, and he's talking to the FBI. And his son kills this guy DeSaro in Frank's house.
Yep.
And they bury his body up in a rock wall, and the body isn't found for decades. Just basically came up just a couple of years ago. But the thing is, what I don't understand is Frank gets picked up. He decides to cooperate years later, and he tells them about 15 murders, but he leaves the DeSaro murder out that his son committed, and his son died years earlier. So I could never figure out, like, why did he not just give him that one? Because that came back to bite him in the ass, and he winds up dying as an old man in prison.
Well, I know that someone told me that his Jackie had something to do with that too. Not that he killed the guy, but he was there. He knew about it. So I think maybe this protected his brother.
That makes sense. I'll just show you a photo. It's I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a photo,
Yeah,
a
that's an old one.
surveillance photo, and in the white shirt you got DeSaro. He's walking out
Mm-hmm.
of the restaurant. The guy in the red jumpsuit is Frank Jr., who's no longer
Junior,
with us.
yep.
I don't know who the guy with the white pants is, and then the guy in the wife beater kind of looks like he's running the show. That's Cadillac Frank Salemi, and it's an eerie photo because, you know, you're saying to yourself, how soon after this photo was taken that DeSaro disappears?
Right.
Mm-hmm. It looks like they all had lunch together. They talked about something. They're all going their separate ways, and you're like, was that the meeting where they said, you know what, he's just not right. He's got to go. I was just curious if you ever seen.
Well, you know, listen, this is what happens. They brought up, you know, this probably Junior or the brother brought him to Frankie's house. Whatever turned up out there, I guess they strangled him in the cellar. They killed him in the house. And that was the end of him. The reasons why, I'm not sure. I didn't get too deep into that. It wasn't my business, you know.
Another wild part of the story that doesn't make sense is Flemmy, who basically divulges this to the FBI and I guess the cops in Massachusetts. He says he just so happened to walk in the house and he's watching this unfold and he says, I'm getting out of here, and he leaves. And I'm saying to myself, they didn't leave that door unlocked. You know, it's not like, you know, someone comes to your door and you got the screen door open and someone could look in. Once that guy walked in that house, that door got shut. No one was getting in and out of that house. That never made sense to me. That Flemmy, I think probably Frank confided in Flemmy of what went down, but that never made sense. That Flemmy says, I just happened to stop by for a cup of coffee and they're killing a guy.
When that story had come out, I never even knew that Flemmy was even there. I knew nothing about that. I got little bits and pieces about that. What happened? I didn't know Flemmy, after when this all came out and Frankie did what he did, then this come out that Flemmy said that he was there. You know, it doesn't make sense to me.
No, me neither. I think Frank told him, and he used that as a card to flip down.
I think so too.
Can you go into your move to Philly and how you got involved with the Philadelphia mob?
Well, actually, you know, I was a proposed guy in the Petriacca family. I was in the Salemi faction. And one night I had a beef with a capo. I'm not going to get too into it. And I wanted to kill him, you know. But I was with a few of my guys, and Bobby Garante, and he said, Bobby, we can't do this. You got to just calm down. You know, this was 3 a.m, and they're not done. And I let it go. But at that point, I knew I wasn't going to get made in the Petriacca family. It only takes one person to turn you down.
Right.
Now I was just rough with a cop. You know, I didn't give a shit about him anymore. And I knew this wasn't going to happen for me. So my friend Jerry Cornette, from Rhode Island, sent the guy Gigi up there, Little John. He was from the Gambino family. He was an associate. He was with Angelo Emilio. You know who Angelo was?
No.
He was a cop in the Gambino family. He went away for heroin years ago.
Oh, I know, before my time.
Yeah, years ago he went away for heroin. And he was still in there when this was going on. And Gigi set up an appointment. He wanted to talk to Pete. And, you know, Pete told him, he says, tell Luisi, there's a family up there. We can't get involved. Because they wanted me to become a capo in the Gambino family. This was my friend's idea. In the meantime, my friend Frankie Rossi, who passed away now, was in prison with Ralph Natali in Philadelphia. And he kept telling me, let's go see Ralph. Because, you know, I was looking to make a move to straighten everything out. So I went down, I saw Ralph. I met Ralph, and, you know, we got along well together. A few meetings with him, and then I met Giorgio Borghese, and eventually met Joey and the rest of the crew. So that's how I got hooked up with the Philly family.
You and Joey must have hit it off. I mean, initially.
Well, you got to remember, he was just coming off a war with Stanford. We were just warring
Okay.
up in Boston. You know, he had a bad crew down there. I'm up here trying to keep my stuff together, you know. Um, in some ways, I wish I didn't get made. I had enough power up there, and but I felt to be legitimate in the life, and you know how it is. You know, you're a pop. You know how we think. You know, I had to get made, and I had to make my guys, which I ended up doing, and I did that through Joey and Georgie in Philadelphia. I like Joey a lot. Joey, we're close in age. We hung around together. We were all drinking and eating. But I really wasn't as close to him as I was to Georgie Borghese. Georgie was like the liaison between Boston and Philadelphia.
So was Natalie more like a figurehead, like the lightning rod of the family?
Joey made him in one night and then made him the boss. That's what Joey did. Kind of unheard of, but that's what Joey did. Joey was smart enough to stay back because he was controlling Philadelphia, not Ralph. Joey was always the boss. Ralph was the front guy.
Yeah, that's all. That's kind of like what happened with Gas Pipe and the Lucchese family,
Yeah,
where Vicamuso was the boss, but Gas Pipe was running around doing anything he wanted.
that's right. That's right.
I watch videos of Ralph Natal. He reminds me of Frank Pantangelis in The Godfather. Senator, I got my own family. It's just weird how life imitates art or art imitates life.
Well, you know what's sad? When I met Ralph, I was really impressed with him. He did a great bid. All the New York guys liked him. That's why Joey made that move with him. And because Joey really didn't need him. But he put Ralph there, whatever their agreement was. Well respected in prison. He did a good bid. When I met him, he seemed like a real good man. He got picked up shortly after I went down there. Ronnie Previty wore a wire on him. Long story short, he's in prison now. He flips. He ends up flipping on everybody. Um, where was I going with the story? I just got lost for a second because I'm trying to think. I'm
No, no,
getting old. I'm
no. We're
getting
talking
old.
about Ralph Natali. Was he the figurehead or was he the boss?
He was just a figurehead. Getting to the story, I saw him on Vlad,
Yes.
and I was so disgusted with that interview. I couldn't believe the things he was saying and the lies that were coming out of his mouth. You know, at that time I had my podcast when he was doing that, but I really didn't want to
Right.
really talk about him. But he was getting me the things he was coming out of his mouth, a few other interviews. You know, I was kind of embarrassed because I was in that family. So I ended up doing a little show on Ralph. It's up there after he passed away.
Yeah, he probably was getting old and bitter. You know what I mean? And we tend to see things through our prism as we get older and not really see, what really happened and just, slights and things just kind of build up. Obviously, you were an earner.
Yeah.
And what was your crew into in Philly?
Well, I didn't have a crew in Philly. My crew was up in Boston. So born and raised in Boston, and all my guys got made down in Philly. My guys got made up in Boston with a few ceremonies. And really, Philly, I had no interaction with Philly until the drug started with Philadelphia. It was meant that I talked with Joey that we were going to keep Boston and Philly separate. For the FBI, interstate, all that nonsense. And that was like that for a little while. I would send an envelope down every month, because we were earning big up there. And as a couple, that's your responsibility to the family. So I was doing that, and then the drug started. The drug deals with Money Previty and the FBI agent.
But you were a capo, correct?
Yes.
So as a capo, did you feel once you became a capo, did you feel more pressure? Because obviously you're a bigger target for the FBI.
Yep.
And also you're talking to more people, which opens you up to more things. So I mean, did you feel the pressure immediately after you became a capo?
I had to tell you, not really, because it was just like when I went back, it was just everyday business. Um, I felt a little pressure maybe from Philly in different ways, because now I got to answer. But no, I really didn't. I didn't feel the pressure. We were under stress. You got to remember, all those other guys got picked up. Everything was ending up there now. But there still wasn't peace because some of the old guys from the Petriarca family were coming home, and I knew there wasn't going to be peace. And I guess every day, 24/7 was pressure anyway. It didn't add on anything. I don't believe it did. If you understand what I'm
No,
saying.
I get it. It was
Yeah,
always there. It wasn't any worse.
exactly. Actually, Philly was kind of like a salvation for me because I used to get away from Boston to go down there. You
That's what
get
I was
away
just going
from
to
home
ask
like
you.
that. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
just going to ask you that. Which city did you find easier to navigate?
Well, definitely Philly. I mean, afterwards, my couple in the family, I'm getting the respect. We go out all the time. We just relax, get a go down there, whatever. Have a few gomas down there. And that was it. That was my escape.
The Gambino crime family had a presence in Cherry Hill.
Yeah, they did.
How did you coexist with them? Were there any beefs?
Well, they did. They coexist with them. There was a lot of rumors that they were going to try to take over and all that nonsense. But, that would be me like saying I'm going with my crew to the Bronx and taking over. First of all, I'd be dead in a week. I don't know anybody there. What am I taking over? What are you taking over? This is what I laugh about. Lucchese's trying to come to Boston. Hey, look, what are you going to do in Boston? You know someone in the corner? What are you going to do? I mean, I'm realistic. I got common sense. I'm not walking in Philly and taking over. I'm not walking in New York and taking over. And you're not coming to my neighborhood and taking over.
Right.
I wish. Huh?
You're
I
right,
don't
man.
care if you got a crew of 10 or 200. If you're not in your territory, you're out of bounds.
Yeah, you don't know the lay of the land and you don't know who's who and what's what.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah.
So at some point you have to deal with a famous, and well, an infamous, or I should say notorious Philly character, Ron Prevent. So for those of you who don't know, Ron Prevent's a former Philly cop. He gets fired. He joins the mafia, and then later becomes a highly paid FBI informant. Can you kind of explain how you were introduced to him and your first impression with him?
When I first met Ronnie, we were at Joey's uncle's house. There was a pool party there. That's the first time I met Ronnie. And I thought he said he had a truckload of frozen shrimp. He was trying to move it. And I went back to Boston, talked to him about it, went back to Boston, go move it. Nobody wanted it. You know, I wasn't into swag and all that bullshit and hot stuff and stolen V. I wasn't into that. But anyway, that passed. And next time I meet Ron, I'm in the Palm Restaurant in Philly, and I end up getting introduced to him. He's a capo now. Capo. I didn't like him. I never felt good about him. I knew there was something wrong with him. I knew it. But I think what Joey was trying to do and Ralph was just put the old and new back together again so there'd be no more problems. And they took this moron in. Now, you were a cop in YPD. You took an oath, didn't you? Like I did
Yeah, sure.
Victor. You take an oath.
Yeah, sure.
So if I see you broke that oath, you're going to break my oath, aren't you? If
That's
you
what I
weren't
can't
trusted with the
understand.
first, how are you going to be trusted with the second?
Well, that makes no sense. What I'm guessing Stanford made him because that Philly war. Because I know it's taboo for the mob to make a cop or even really deal with one.
Anybody, yeah.
And yeah, but I'm guessing that the Merlina Stanford war depleted the ranks to a point where Stanford, I guess, figured he must have been a hell of an earner for Stanford to make him and keep him around.
Well, what I really believe is the state police and the feds were giving him no money the whole time. Because when all those arrests come down, Ronnie, not happening to Ronnie, we got to watch and look at all this. Stanford, all those guys go down. Where's Ronnie in the picture? He's out
Right.
of the picture. So this has been going on with this guy. Now, when he gets back in with Ralph and Joey, the feds come with a big offer. And he's a greedy little prick. He went for it. And then that's what happened. So why they were doing the investigation with Joey, and he was informing on Joey, they had a good shot to come and get me now. So the feds pushed Joey to have a meeting up there with me to get me involved in this. because I was well cushioned. They told me that several times after my arrest. They didn't know how to get me. And, you know, this Ronnie thing with Joey, that's how I got pinched.
Yeah, Ron Prevett, he's one of those guys. He was an unrepentant criminal. I mean, you watch YouTube videos that after it was all over, he was living out in the open and he thought the whole thing was funny. And the thing is, he played both sides against the middle and he won.
Well, he really wasn't living out in the open. He wasn't in Jersey. The day we got arrested, they went looking for him. It was figured out right away it was Ronnie. His house was already sold. He was gone. So he was in the FBI program. God knows where they put him, you know. When he was making these documentaries, yeah, he's down the shore walking around. You know, there's not 20 Philly guys looking for him down the shore. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of that's full of shit, to be honest with you.
That makes sense because I was like, he burned so many people. How was he out there? And he's not like, you know, he's instant. He's one of these guys you recognize him. He's not going to wear a disguise or, I mean, he's Ron Prevett no matter where he goes.
Yeah, exactly. I think his whole career was bullshit, to be honest with you. And all the money that Joey got and Ralph or whatever was all coming from the feds and the state police. Yeah,
They
that's why.
kept him afloat.
Yeah. So any envelopes, whatever he was turning over, it all came from them.
The Philly's right next to Camden, New Jersey, and it seems like every few years the feds come and arrest the mayor. To date, they've arrested. It's like a joke. Like, why would you want that job? But like, and it was in that movie American Hustle that mayor got arrested. And to date, in the Abscan scandal, but there's been 3 mayors from Camden arrested in 40 years. Did you guys deal with Camden officials?
They may have. I had nothing to do with that. Yeah.
I was just curious about that because and Camden is a dump. I've been down there a couple of times. It's just like a forgotten place because it's between Philly and the end of Jersey, and there's no federal money really for the place, and it's like it's like an abandoned wasteland.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually, you get hit with 14 years in federal prison. Where did you do most of your time?
I did. Well, they moved me around. I was in New York at 9/11 in Manhattan.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah, we got locked down. They locked us down a few months, MCC. And from there, I went to Stansel, Minnesota. There, 28 months, got in a fight, got moved, was in Arizona for 7 years. And then I was moved my last year, and I went to Allenwood, Pennsylvania, before I got out. Easier to see my family, you know.
Yeah,
And
because
that was it. Yeah. But what happened was my first trial, I got found guilty. I got 235 months on my first trial. What happens, I went in appeal. I was the first one to overturn a drug case in Boston, in my district, as far as I know. That's what I was told. In fact, till today, I guess a lot of people use my case, you know, with their stuff. But then I went back to trial. I lost again, but I fell through the cracks. If you remember, they changed the guidelines. I don't know if it was 2006.
Yes.
I don't remember. And I fell through the cracks. They had me as the boss in Boston, Joey as the boss in Philadelphia. But the second trial, they found that Joey was the boss. And I took an order from him, and they knocked off the points, and I ended up with 15-7. And I actually did 13-9. When I won the appeal, I got my good time back for fighting, thank God. You know.
You must have met a lot of famous guys inside, no?
Oh, Gambinos, Columbos, Bananos. Yeah, I met a lot of people in there.
Did I think I saw it on another podcast. Did you meet Carlos later?
Carlos was my cellmate in Allenwood. I'm sorry, in Minnesota, in Sandstone, Minnesota. Like I said, I didn't really like Carlos. We didn't end up getting along with each other. He ended up moving out of the cell, which was a good thing, you know. Yeah, he was a little Too
Is he
much
still a
sugar, I
commie?
think he had in his tank. Huh?
Is he still a commie? Is he
I
still
don't
in
know
the
what he
United
is
States?
now. I'll tell you, I don't know what he is.
I don't think he's ever getting out.
I don't know. Someone told me he did. I'm like, I don't think he's going to get out.
Yeah, me
He
neither. I
got
mean,
50 years before that ruling came down. You know, that in Colombia they could only do 30 years or whatever it was. And he kept fighting that. But I don't think he ever got out.
did you know Pat Nee?
I wasn't friends with Pat. You know, these are South Boston guys. These are, you know,
There's a I don't know if you know this story. There's a fascinating story about Pat Nee. He dealt with Whitey quite a bit, and
yeah.
Whitey was always leery of him of encroaching on his territory. So at some point, Whitey sells Pat Nee a machine gun,
Hmm.
and he takes out the firing pin, hoping that Pat Nee gets killed during a bank robbery because his Nee and his guys were knocking over banks and then supposedly sending the money to Ireland. And
Yeah.
Nee gets picked up with this machine gun before he and his gang can pull off this bank robbery. And he gets sentenced to
Hmm.
like 1,000,000 years. But then they test the machine gun and they realize that Whitey had pulled the firing pin, so it's not a fully operational machine gun. So
Right.
he wound up getting out of jail. So Whitey tried killing him and got him sprung out of jail. If I heard the story correctly.
Hmm. It's funny because I did a Netflix show, How to Become a Mob Boss or a
Oh,
Boss,
I
whatever
saw
it
that.
was.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, Pat was in that, right? I'm
yeah.
pretty sure. But I think Pat was in that one too. But yeah, no, I never really met him. I never met him, but I heard things about him. Ballsy guy, you know,
Oh, yeah.
a lot of things. Yeah.
What's your take on the Gardner Museum heist?
Well, they're saying that in 1993, Bobby Garrenti hooked up with me and his nephew. At that time, I was partners with his nephew in a few things, and I got close with Bobby. And he told me one time we were in a safe house that Miles Corner comes on the TV. They're talking about the garden and the artwork, and he turned around and says to me, "I know where it is. It's buried in Florida." So right there, boom, I know he's got something to do with it. I don't know if he was there or afterwards, whatever. And when he passed away, the FBI came to me and asked me about that. And he was already passed away, so I wasn't ranting on
Right,
him. I
right.
just, you know, told him the story that I was told. And long story short, there were so many stories around him and Bobby Gentile with this art that I really don't know the true story. But if they went in there, and I know Wonk, I know these guys, someone must have wanted something in there. This is my theory.
Roger.
They went in and got with whoever wanted whatever, painting, whatever it was, and they made, you know, they made themselves their own and just started robbing everything. What else are they gonna do in there? They're already in there, you know? So I don't know what happened to it, where it is, if a collector has it, if it's buried somewhere rotting away, I don't know. But from what I understand, that Bobby Guarantee was definitely involved in it.
Do you think that once you think after they got all that stuff out of that museum that they realized with the coverage and everything and then how expensive this stuff is worth, they were in over their heads?
Yeah, I believe that. I believe that's why I believe, and they would have known that before they went in there. That's why I really believe somebody wanted something.
And
They
had
might
to
have got
pay.
paid to go in there, like, give me that painting, 20,000, whatever. This is my thought. I may be wrong. I know Bobby pretty well. We were together every day, and I can't see him doing anything on chance. I really can't. It's one thing
Makes
to go
sense.
rob a bank, you know, stick somebody up, but to go do something like that, how are you going to move it? So he asked me. He says, "You think we could bring it to Philly or New York with your friends?" I says, "I don't know. I never did anything like this before. I never got rid of artwork, and I let it go. I never pursued it. I never asked them again. I wish I did. No, really, really. I would have went to wherever it was buried. I would have went about the house and dug them up, you know.
It probably would have
But
cost you, Bobby. Looking back, it probably would have cost you more trouble.
oh yeah, I know.
I get what you're saying, but that would be like listen, I don't have that mind, I don't have that connection, but that would be like I'm on the beach and 30 kilos of coke wash up and I'm the only one there. I wouldn't know who to sell it to, where to move it. I'd be a nervous wreck. So I think you're right. I think they got in over their heads with that. And then once that media coverage and the amount of law enforcement that was all over that and the reward and, it was like, oh shit, and then they probably figured, well, let's just put it somewhere, bury it in Florida or wherever, and we'll lay low. And then they wind up dying. Someone will find it.
Yeah, and then they said they brought it to Philly when I was in prison. I know nothing about that. Is it possible Bobby Gentile was going back and forth to Philly? I don't know. But the Philly guys, they're closed mouthed. Even if they did take it, we're never going to find out. Do I believe they did? No. I don't believe it ever went down there. I really don't, but who knows? I was away at the time.
So on a lighter side of all this criminal stuff, you and I have a friend in common. I met your buddy Bobby, who runs a great walking tour in Boston's North End. He showed us where they filmed the Prince Spaghetti commercial. Anthony!
Yeah, yeah.
And if you're in Boston, I highly recommend this guy's tour. He takes you around. You hit all the restaurants. You eat like a king. I haven't spoken to him in years, but his website is called northendbostontour.com. You grew up with him, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Him and his brother, I knew them. A great family. Really nice people. And he's doing great with that tour.
I hope so. It was probably about 2 hours. It was great. We ate and just, the history of the North End. And it was funny because I got him on the side and I started asking him organized crime. He just stopped me. He goes, I'm guessing you're a retired cop or detective. I said, yeah. He goes, I can't go into that. And I said, no problem.
Yeah,
I respect that. You got to live here. And but again, it's a great tour. And you learn so much about Boston's North End.
He has that on Facebook too.
Does he?
Yeah, it's on Facebook.
All right. Well, Bobby, I hope you're watching this podcast, and I hope your business prospers. So, Bobby, at some point you go back to your faith. Can you go into that?
Yeah, I'll talk about that. Because actually on my podcast I have gangster interviews like we're doing now, and I also have Christian teachings up there and documentaries. It was 1998. I'll tell you how it started. All my life, I saw things and heard things. Believe me, the shadows, I saw all that. Used to hear things and never paid attention to it. I let it just go past me, And, well, anyway, one night, I'm out drinking with the guys. I got home 2, 3 in the morning, room spinning. I wasn't one really to do drugs, but I did have cocaine stashed in my hutch, locked up. Because I never took it to the house, but one of my main guys wanted something, and I gave it to him. I didn't let no one else give it to him. So I had it there for him. Says, you know what? I chipped off a piece. I never sniffed it. I ate it because I'm allergic to it. And I started feeling better, and now I'm wound up, and now I'm still drinking wine. I'm out of my mind. I go in the room, and all these things started happening. And I got to write about it in my book. Long story short, I sat 8 hours with a spirit in the room, showing me different things. And that night, I knew there was Satan, and I knew there was a Christ. And I asked the demon, I said, is Jesus coming? He said, no. He said, no. So now, all these things happen. The church comes. My mother at that time, they had a church in East Boston, and she comes with the pastor, Pastor Lou. I take communion that night. And that night I decide there is a Satan, there is a God, and I want the Jesus. Because my mother's church used to pray for me constantly because they knew what I was doing, Now I think maybe I'm out of my mind. Maybe the cult did this. I don't know what happened. But there was a haunting afterwards. There were a lot of spiritual things that went on. Because I never touched that stuff again after that. And I ended up coming to the Lord. I started getting visions, different things were happening. That's how I wrote my book, God's Plan Revealed. And I started, when I went to prison, I got a degree in theology. So I do have a degree. I wrote God's Plan Revealed in prison, also from Catholic Christian, my testimony. And that's how I came to Christ. The devil made me do it. Seriously. Because what I saw that night and what he told me, I was living a bad life, my friend. You know that.
That might be the
We're
name of your
talking
next
murder,
book.
drug dealing, extortion.
That might be the name of your next book.
What's that?
The Devil Made Me Do It.
I know, right? So not well. There's another book coming out.
You got
Emily
a name?
Sweeney. Yeah. Four on the Floor, the Bobby Luisi story.
Okay.
She's a head reporter for the Boston Globe. She's written a few more books about Boston, and she's writing my book right now. It's for pre-sale up on Amazon, and my other two books are up on Amazon, and also on my Etsy store. I have the two books, Etsy, and anywhere in the country, I'll mail it to anybody that wants it for $25 signed.
All right, so please go through the name of your books again and where people can find them.
God's Plan Revealed, and what that book is about is, I'm a creationist. I believe totally in the Bible. It breaks down from the book of Genesis all the way to Revelations in a biblical timeline. The second book, From Copper to Christian, it talks about the war in Boston a little, but more of a testimony of how, at the end, how I became a Christian and the things that I saw. It's in depth what I saw that night and what happened to me, you know. But like I said, it's in the book. If anybody's interested in that. It's like a cross genre, From Copper to Christian.
And what's the name of the book again? One more time, that's available or pre-sale?
Oh, the pre-sale? Four on the Floor, the Bobby Luisi story.
And Robert, can you tell our listeners where they can contact you for speaking events?
All right. I have a website, bobbyluisi.com, and I have Jot Farm up there. They can send me an email. I got a contact page. And donations for the church, there's a donation page there too. So,
Robert, I want to thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. I really appreciate it.
thank you for having me on, my friend.
Thank you. And I want to thank everyone else for tuning in, especially my friends in Providence, Rhode Island, Philly, Jefferson City, Missouri, Marlborough, Massachusetts. Wow, I'm going north, huh?
Mhm.
Bloomfield, Connecticut. And Bobby, is Bloomfield, Connecticut, is that a mobbed up city?
I don't know. It may be. I don't think so.
If you work in law enforcement or have an interesting criminal background and like to be a guest on the show, please drop me a note at VicFerrari50. If you enjoy the content, check out my Amazon author page. Type in my name, Vic Ferrari like the car, where you can preview all my books for free, including NYPD Law and Disorder. Again, check out Bobby Luisi's books. He's got an interesting story, and I think you should listen to it. Thank you for everyone, and thanks for tuning in.